Good morning, and hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. We are on Sirius 110, and joining us is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Chairman Priebus, welcome to the airwaves. Hello. Mr. Chairman, can you hear us?
Hey, this is Reince.
Yes, welcome to the airwaves. Thank you so much for joining the Armstrong Williams Show. Everyone is talking about the scandals and the president, whether it's the IRS, whether it's Benghazi, whether it's the Associated Press. Just in perspective from the RNC, at what level do you think any of these charges rise? Do they rise to the level of impeachment? Do we need to take a step back? We're reacting too prematurely. And how do you think, what is your, from your perspective, the seriousness of this with this administration, considering that we are a nation of laws?
Well, there's a couple things there. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to come back often. So, number one, thank you. We're grateful for doing this, for you inviting me. But to your point, I mean, I'm not sure how high this is going to go, but it's possible it reaches the highest levels, in the White House. But I just think that we've got a few chapters to go through before we get to the last chapter, and I think that's the job of the legislature and the House and the Senate to investigate what happened, to connect the dots, and see where the evidence leads. You know, I think it's really important that we handle this intelligently and reasonably, and we ask the question. So as to the AP, obviously I think that the broad sweeping scope of these subpoenas is something that we need to look at, and how those decisions were made, and how Eric Holder interacted in the production and the execution of the subpoena, whether he truly recused himself from the beginning or started the process and then recused himself. The IRS is the same issue as well. You know, we've got mixed stories as far as when the president knew and when he knew it. Obviously, lots of folks around the president knew before the IG report now, so that's contrary to what these folks have said in the beginning. And Benghazi continues to fester. And there's a lot of unanswered questions as they relate to the president, his campaign, and Hillary Clinton. So I can't tell you that this rises to the level of impeachment and all of these other things that folks are talking about, but what I can tell you is that it certainly rises to the level that a lot of action is needed, and I think that we need to act reasonably and intelligently and see where the evidence leads.
You know, over this past weekend, Mr. Chairman, President Obama was the commencement speaker at Morehouse College, and there were aspects of the speech which you could have given and have been very comfortable in talking about, that you cannot blame the woes of an entire community on racism. The president said at one point when he was a college kid, he would use racism as a crutch, but he knew now that it was not a lie, and he implored what he considered to be, and I quote, young brothers not to use that as a crutch. Given the technology, the interconnectedness in the world today, there's no way you can blame racism for not being successful, for not taking care of your families, for not being responsible, for not being accountable. It was mind-boggling. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, I think the president gives good speeches, and I think he's relatable. And I saw clips of the speech. I didn't see the entire speech, but I mean, he can be inspirational at times. But you know, the fact is, I'm really just looking at how he's done his job as president.
You know, no, I'm not. Let me interrupt you.
I'm not. Doesn't have a very good job following through on it.
I'm not talking about good speeches. I'm talking about the message of personal accountability and responsibility, which is a mantra of the party, of the Republican Party.
I think he's right. I mean, obviously, I think he's right that we're all responsible for the actions that we take in life, and I think that we're also responsible for how we interact with other people as well, and I think it's a two-way street. And so while I'm taking your word for it as far as what exactly was said, I think it's a two-way street. I think that we owe everyone an opportunity as employers and people that interact with other people to give people a fair shot, not based on the color of their skin, but the content of their character and also the things that they've accomplished in life. But I also believe that is mainly determined by the individual, and so I agree with that.
You know, we have followed closely as you've gone to New York with Pastor A.R. Bernard and the Christian Culture Center, and we saw that he had an article in the Huffington Post this week following it up, talking about personal responsibility and accountability and why the Republican Party has a future for Americans who just happen to be black. And you continue this, and you've committed it with money. But this is something that you're very committed to, and obviously it doesn't come across as it's for political reasons or political gain. You just feel that it's a principled position. It's something that the Republican Party needs to be very serious about. Why?
Well, because I think that the days of hiring a few people down the hallway here and trying to get a couple headlines and claiming that we're doing, this broad outreach when, in reality we're really having these massive 5-month parachute campaigns where we show up in, July and August with a massive amount of people and money at the last second. It just isn't working. I mean, we need real, true, deep-rooted engagement. So what we're talking about is hiring hundreds of people across the country, not just volunteers. I'm talking about paying people in communities across America to get to know people, to go to community events, to go to church festivals, to go on Main Street and talking about our party, our candidates, and who we are. Listen, I mean, we're the party of freedom, opportunity. We're the party of equality, but you wouldn't know it. You know why? Because we're not talking about it. We're not selling who we are. And it's just not working in today's world of permanent politics for us to simply show up at the last second and expect to do well. Now, look, I'm not delusional. I don't think that we're going to win, in a year and a half, over 50% of the African-American vote. But I sure as heck hope that we can make some inroads and do just a little bit better, a little at a time. This is not a short-term view. I just want to make sure you understand. I don't look at this and say, okay, we're going to straighten everything out. We're going to be the choice of a majority of Hispanics and African Americans and Asians, and we're just suddenly going to fix everything tomorrow. I think this is a long-term view. I think it's incremental. But I'll tell you what, if we're not committed to it in a huge way here at the party, it's never going to change. I mean, we just can't continue this sort of outreach mentality. And I've just sort of hit a boiling point on it. And sure, the results in November helped make that happen, but I also learned a lot, too. And I think we're all entitled to learn and make adjustments as we go.
Mr. Chairman, I want to follow up because obviously people are chatting about this new approach by the Grand Old Party and you as its chair. And they're not as skeptical. Many blacks have said, we want to be able to have people compete for our votes. We need to be a majority in both parties. But while you reach out, don't you also believe that their hands need to reach your way? Also, there are certain things that they should do that at least give it a chance, give it an opportunity to consider it. Because isn't it a two-way street?
Well, it is a two-way street, but I do believe that the party has a responsibility. Just like, think about anything. I mean, even your own show and Sirius and the company you're with and all these people, in both in politics and in life have a responsibility to promote and market and brand and tell people who they are and why they believe what they believe. I mean, you still have to go out and bring the message. Now, obviously, I'm hopeful that people will keep their ears open and at least give us an opportunity. And I think that is a responsibility that we have, is to listen to all sides of a case. But ultimately, I think the burden rests on us. And quite frankly, I don't think we've been out there in a way that's been granular and that has reached people in different communities like we should. I mean, it's years and years of sort of accepting the fact, which isn't right and is not appropriate, but thinking that, well, we're not going to really do well in the African American community, so maybe we ought to spend our money in different places. Well, that's a losing mentality, and that's a mentality that I want to end. And I don't want to end it by just making believe that we're doing something about it with 4 people here. I want to do something about it in communities, hiring people from those communities to talk to people in the communities, because those are the leaders that will influence people. It's not people like me and others here in D.C. It's finding the right people in Detroit and Cleveland and Philadelphia to speak to the people in Detroit and Cleveland and Philadelphia. That's how you move people, and that's what we have to do a better job of.
We're listening to the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Mr. Reince Priebus, who was elected chair in January 14, 2011, and reelected January 25, 2013. Moving right along, why is Benghazi still so relevant, and why is it that it won't go away?
Well, it won't go away because the administration hasn't been clean on how they've approached the questions that they've received. I mean, the whole thing started, as we know, and I won't go through the whole background, but because we know so much about it, but the answers that were given, both by the administration and the Department of State, weren't straight to the truth of what actually occurred in Benghazi. So you started out with misinformation, and then on top of it, you had your Assistant Secretary of State out there perpetrating something that wasn't true, and now, of course, you get the emails that clearly show that
Mr. Chairman, just hold there. We're going to come back quickly. Just hold your point. We'll be back within seconds.
Okay.
Chairman Priebus, don't go away.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.